Okay, I just want to, lay this out as the low-wage worker movement in the United States continues to grow, and that is as in low-wage workers saying, I've had enough and I'm not going to take it anymore, damn it. It's becoming obvious that many Americans don't understand anything about basic economics. I know this from personal experience. The other day, I wrote an article for Alternet.com arguing that, or Alternet.org, whatever it is, arguing that any company that refuses to pay its workers a living wage should get the axe. They should get the corporate death penalty. And almost as soon as that article went online, the economically ignorant took to the message boards to bash it. And two comments that really stood out as representative of just how misinformed most people are about economics really popped out. One was by Terrelline Merritt's, whatever. I mean, these are pseudonyms, so it doesn't matter. He or she said, quote, "This is a capitalistic country. Running a business is a right in a free capitalist country like ours. If we made such stupid laws as saying they must offer full-time jobs when they do not want to, or that they must pay what some outsider decides is a living wage, they will simply go into business online and move their physical business overseas to a place where they face no such control." End of quote. Okay, this is so full of confusion and misinformation and just basic economic ignorance that I need to break it down. First of all, America is not a capitalistic country. We are a constitutionally limited democratic republic. Representative democratic republic. I mean, learn some basic civics and economics. Capitalism is one of many forms of economics that we practice in the United States, but we are not a capitalist nation. You have socialistic parts of the United States, the U.S. Army, for example. So socialist that they provide health care, they provide clothing, they provide food, they provide housing, they provide everything. I mean, it's like the ultimate socialist entity, the U.S. Army. We have worker-owned co-ops, which are, they're not really communist because they're not run by the government, but they're a form of, well, they're not a form of capitalism. Or you could argue that they're a form of capitalism where there is no capitalist, or where the workers are the capitalists, but whatever. The word capitalism appears nowhere in our Constitution or our founding documents. Nowhere. People are running around going, America's a capitalist country. No, we're not. We're a democratic republic. And if you're unhappy with the Supreme Court, we're a constitutional monarchy. Okay. Second thing that this bozo said in his or her comment is that running business, it's a right. You have the absolute right to run business in America. Well, yeah, if you want to run a business in a way that does not involve the commons whatsoever, which is damn near impossible. But if you want to run a business that uses any of the things that I'm going to list in just a second, that's a privilege. For example, using a stable currency and a stable banking system. I'm paying for that with my taxes so that, you and I and anybody else who wants to run a business can run a business. Have a predictable and fair court systems and laws about the rules of business. To have transportation, electrical, water, septic, communications infrastructure, all paid for by we the people. Businesses have access to all these things at no cost. Well, the cost that they have is taxes, but most big businesses in America pay little to no tax. In fact, most businesses, more than 90% of businesses in America pay no taxes. Part of the privilege of doing business is you get a criminal justice system to enforce the rules of the game of business. And you get a workforce educated at the public expense and protected with a public pension called Social Security. So there you go. Now, another thing that this person said is that, well, if you just force people to pay a minimum wage, then they're going to move their business overseas. Well, yeah, actually, we've seen a lot of that. We've lost 50,000 factories in the last decade, or decade and a half, since 2000. But that would not have happened if we had rational trade policies like we had from George Washington until Ronald Reagan. I mean, if we simply said, no, you don't have to, you don't have to like go all authoritarian and say, no, you can't run your business overseas. You do it very simply. You say, fine, you want to open a factory in India? Or buy from a factory in India and put your brand on it and, pretend that it's an American brand? Cool. When that product hits the shores of the United States, we are going to tax you. It's called a tariff, an import tax. Another commenter, Vay, had something to say about my Alternet piece. Vay said, wondering what that living wage would be. Why not $50? No matter how high you go, more talented workers will demand an equal raise. Yes, you get to feel all fuzzy inside for helping the working people and yet personally benefit from your efforts, both monetarily and self-righteousness. Truly, prices would rise to offset most real gains, and many, especially the unemployed, would just suffer from the runaway inflation created. Doing businesses is a right, my good fellow. It is called freedom. Actually, Vay, you're wrong. So, what is a rational bottom point? You said, why don't we just make $50 the minimum wage? Well, there's actually, there's historically, I don't know if you've got the audio, Shane, of this, Teddy Roosevelt talking about a living wage. We can play it in the next segment. We'll get to it. But Teddy Roosevelt laid out what a living wage would be. Teddy, not Franklin, Teddy, the Republican Roosevelt. Back in like 1905 or something, when he was president. He said it would vary, from place to place around the United States. So it makes sense that states would establish minimum wages, but there should be a federal basic minimum. But he said it should be enough to secure the elements of a normal standard of living, a standard high enough to make morality possible. This is Teddy Roosevelt's language. In other words, you don't have to steal to eat. It must be enough to provide for education and recreation. In other words, to send your kids to school and to take a vacation every year, to care for immature members of the family, to take care of the kids, to maintain the family during periods of sickness, and to permit a reasonable savings for old age. Here's Teddy Roosevelt saying it.
We stand for a living wage. Wages are subnormal if they fail to provide a living for those who devote their time and energy to industrial occupation. The monetary equivalent of a living wage varies according to local conditions, but must include enough to secure the elements of a normal standard of living. A standard high enough to make morality possible, to provide for education and recreation, to care for immature members of the family, to maintain the family during periods of sickness, and to permit a reasonable saving for old age.
There you go. Teddy Roosevelt. Recorded by Thomas Edison himself, by the way. I mean, back in the day, right? And so that's a minimum wage. That's your living wage. And I think, in today's dollars, that's at least $10 an hour, and probably in most parts of this country, considerably more than that. Here in Washington, D.C., probably 15. This was the suggestion made to Walmart. With regard to your point about my feeling warm and fuzzy about, helping raise the wages, that it's got nothing to do with feeling warm and fuzzy. It's about making an economy that works, and that makes a nation that works. And in response to your point about prices and inflation, prices would not rise, CEO salaries and dividends would decline. Read your history. Okay. Another one of the things that, this argument that was thrown at me when I suggested that we should raise our minimum wage, or that if a company can't at least pay a reasonable minimum wage, they have such a bad business model they shouldn't be in business, is that minimum wages are inflationary. And they're not. What causes inflation is a shortage of things. Let me say it again. Arguably, you can say, okay, inflation is caused by massive numbers of dollars, right? Like the Germans, hyperinflated their currency. But that is so rare and so almost impossible to do. I mean, there was actually a shortage of German marks. You know, they could not afford to pay for the Treaty of Versailles. So that shortage of German marks caused the hyperinflation in Germany, you could say. The inflation of the 1970s, for example, that hit Jimmy Carter and hit Ronald Reagan, that was caused by the Arab oil embargo. It produced a shortage of oil. So when you've got a shortage, and because almost everything in America is made out of oil is like the essential commodity, that shortage tracked through the economy. It just trickled all through the economy. So we had inflation as a result of the Arab oil embargo and the resulting increase in the cost of oil. It had nothing to do with printing money or not printing money. And then finally, you say economic activity between individuals is a right, but if you want protections from liability, which is what a corporation, you know, your limit of liability is your investment, that's it. If you want protections from liability, if you want to use our courts, if you want to use any of that other business infrastructure that I went through that rant just a few minutes ago, and if you want it, then business is a privilege. I mean, learn some basic economics and civics. I know it's easy to dismiss this kind of misinformation as just your usual internet trolling, but I think that's a mistake. I guarantee you that if you walked into any bar in any city in the United States and started talking about a living wage, you would hear the same sort of stuff. Oh, it's inflationary. Oh, why not set it at $50 an hour? Oh, it's companies will just go overseas. I don't know if it's because people have been brainwashed by Fox News or they just don't know any better, but the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of Americans don't understand basic economics, and the right-wing media knows this. And that's why on Thursday, when fast food workers in hundreds of cities across the country walked off their jobs to demand a living wage, the right-wing media churned out hours and hours of anti-worker propaganda filled with the same sort of misinformed rhetoric used by the commentators on my Alternet article. And that rhetoric is nonsense. And Thursday's strikes, however, are far from nonsense. They're the real deal, the logical conclusion of 32 years of failed Reaganomics that's turning our country into a third world banana republic. I mean, there's just no other way around it.